getting the most out of your wedding photography, today on Every Last Detail TV. This episode of Every Last Detail TV is made possible by Indie Atlantic Films. Welcome to Every Last Detail TV. I'm Lauren and I'm here at the Postcard Inn in St. Pete Beach, Florida, an amazing venue. I'm here with Shay Cochran of Shay Cochran Photography today to answer a couple of questions on photography. So photography is a big portion of your budget and I want you all to get the most out of your wedding photography, which is why I asked Shay to come and give us a little bit of insight. So Shay, what should a bride and groom do before they hire a photographer?
One of the best things that you can do before you hire your photographer is plan to meet in person at a consultation. This might seem like common sense, but I also would recommend bringing the groom to the consultation as well, because the photographer is going to get to learn a lot about your personal style, the way that you interact as a couple, just from meeting you at that consultation. So it's one of the ways that you are helping your photographer to be able to go into the wedding day with an understanding of how you relate, what your style is as a couple, what your sense of humor is, what your likes and dislikes are. Most people know they should meet in person with a photographer ahead of time, but I would also just recommend bring your fiance and don't be afraid to share as much of yourself as possible during that consultation. That way your photographer knows how they're going to be able to best capture you and your unique style on your wedding day.
Because you want to almost feel like you already know the photographer.
Exactly.
And you want to kind of be friends with them and be really comfortable with them because you spend a lot of time with your photographer on your wedding day.
It's true.
Yeah.
You become best friends.
Yes. So my next question is, how important is an engagement session? Because I've heard some of my brides and grooms have said, oh, we don't need an engagement session, we have plenty of pictures of ourselves, but I'm a proponent for it, so what do you think about it?
I would say look at your engagement session as like test driving a car. Before you make this major investment in photography for your wedding day, which is going to take up a large percentage of your budget, give your photographer the opportunity to kind of audition for you. So you've invested a small amount in an engagement session, but in the long run, you get to see your photographer interact with you the way that they're going to interact on the wedding day. You get to see that in the shoot. You get to see obviously the quality of images, just kind of the flow of things, how your personality meshes. You get all of that in scheduling an engagement session ahead of time. And then worst case scenario, if you don't like it, then you haven't booked them yet for your wedding day. So it's kind of a way of test driving your photographer without making a huge investment before you do make a major investment on your wedding day.
I'm a big proponent of knowing your photographer beforehand and kind of knowing what their style is as well. Some of you may know that I had not the best experience with photography for my own wedding. I just kind of went on recommendations of other people and I wasn't totally completely happy. That's another episode. But what advice do you have for a bride and groom who want amazing photography but are on a little bit more of a budget than they could totally splurge for?
Yeah. One thing that I always recommend with my clients is if you're on a little bit more of a budget and maybe the hours that you can afford to do don't quite cover the entire span of your event, then I would say push those hours towards the beginning of your day. The images that are going to be of a little more importance to you are going to be the ones of you getting ready, the detail shots that are taken. You really are not going to need another 200 shots of your uncle dancing on your dance floor. Those are not the ones that take up the majority of the albums. Those aren't the ones that go on the wall. So unless you are doing a really big send-off that you definitely want to have photographed, then I would say push those hours to the beginning of the day. Usually I like to start no later than 2 hours before a wedding day, before the ceremony I mean. Ideally though, 3 hours before the ceremony, and that depends on whether or not you do your bride and groom session before or in between.
Or a first look.
Or your first look, for example. But I would say plan to shoot for 2 to 3 hours before the ceremony. And again, if you're a little bit on a little bit smaller of a budget, then go ahead and put those hours towards the beginning of the day as opposed to having them run through the entire reception. You don't need another 100 dancing pictures.
Yes.
At least that's my opinion.
Yeah. Next question for you is, do you have any tips for the wedding day for brides and grooms to get the most out of their photography?
I would say, if you think back to what you remember of your parents' weddings, your parents' wedding photos, or your friends' wedding photos, those images that become really iconic wedding day images are usually images that are taken during your bride and groom session on that day. Sometimes they're reception pictures or dancing pictures and that kind of thing. But usually those really iconic images come from your, what I call, bride-groom session. Typically, traditionally, that takes place in between the ceremony and the reception.
Yeah, and something else that you could think about too is take a look at kind of the month that you get married and what time your ceremony is, and that can kind of tell you whether or not you need to look into booking your bride-groom session beforehand, before your actual wedding day, because if you don't have enough time for photos, or if you're on a really strict schedule, Catholic churches for instance, you don't have much time, you have to get in and get out.
Or especially if you are a Florida bride who wants a ceremony at sunset, but then also wants portraits and family portraits after the ceremony, which is after sunset then.
Yeah, so and then it's dark.
Exactly, talk through these things with your photographer.
Yes, totally, they're there for you. And then, okay, so last question is, I hear a lot of brides and grooms saying that they don't want an album. What's your advice on that?
Yeah, my advice is that, again, I'll go back to the memory of your parents' wedding album or your grandparents' wedding album. You know what it feels like to be able to sit on your couch and open up this big leather, smelly album, and you get to like tangibly leaf through the images and that kind of thing. 20 years from now, you're not going to sit your child down on the computer, pop open Facebook, and show them your wedding images. You want to have a tangible something that shows the investment that you made, other than just the images that are going to live on your computer for the next 20, 30 years. So even if it means having less hours of coverage, work with your photographer to somehow incorporate an album. There are also a lot of other album products out there. Maybe it's not a product that is your photographer's primary product that they offer, but I'm usually more than willing to work with clients to come up with a book or something else, a magazine style album that's going to be more within their budget, but will still give them a tangible return on their investment that they can feel and see and turn and show their kids. So yeah, really, it's just really important. Being a photographer, didn't have an album as a part of my wedding package, and 5 years later, I still don't have a wedding album, and that is a shame. I need to do it. So
you could do it when you...
Whatever you have to do, whatever you have to do, those funds are going to be available then when you're doing your wedding planning. You want to be able to make that investment later, but chances are it doesn't always happen. So prioritize that, even if you have to cut back a few hours during maybe the reception, and work with your photographer to come up with some kind of album product that's included in your package.
Thank you so much for answering all of our questions. I hope some of you can find some answers in those. And be sure to check out Shay's work at shaycochran.com. For more great tips about how to have an awesome wedding, be sure to check out my blog at everylastdetailblog.com. And a big thank you to our sponsors, Indie Atlantic Films. Check out some of their work. Now for today's viewer question, how can I incorporate my pet into my wedding? Well, there's a couple of different things to consider when you are wanting to incorporate your pet into your wedding. You want to make sure that first of all your pet is well behaved enough to where they're not going to be a nuisance, they're not going to ruin any wedding dresses, and also not run away. For instance, my dog would probably just follow me and my husband around. But I know some dogs, like my parents' dog, has a tendency to just flee no matter what. So if somebody happened to let go of the leash, she'd be gone. But of course, there's the age-old dog is the ring bearer. His dog trots up the aisle to daddy and mommy. And again, that comes down to the behavior of your pet. So with that, incorporating your pet into your wedding is kind of just contingent on how well behaved your pet is. If you have a question, please send me an email at lauren@everylastdetailblog.com. tweet me at ELD_Lauren or ask me on the ELD Facebook page. Thank you for watching Every Last Detail TV. I'm Lauren and this is Shay, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah. See, we can't do funny on the spot.
I waved. I don't wave.
I waved. We did a double wave. See, this is what they do. I do it to people too. You just wait through the awkwardness. And just wait for it. And when it gets the most awkward, that's when it becomes funny. I do it to people all the time. Thank you. Thanks for I did for them. Anytime you want to cut it off, okay? All right, am I free?
Y'all making bacon?